Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham, Rucha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Genesis, the 30th chapter. And when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister, and said unto Jacob, Give me children, or else I die. And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel. And he said, Am I in God's stead, who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? So, is it you saying that, like, you getting at me like I'm the one who's made you barren? And she said, Behold my maid Bilhah, go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees. And what that means is just similar to what Sarah did. Rachel here, after seeing that the Lord had opened up Leah's womb and how she just kept having children for Jacob, she started to get attention more. And so Rachel says, look, go and sleep with my handmaid, and then when she's going to have that child in my stead. So the child that she bears will be mine, that I may also have children by her. And so, and in the ancient world, it was like that, right? Like that, let me look this up here. Surrogate mother. So a surrogate mother is a person or animal that takes on all or part of the role of mother to another person or animal. Okay, here, a woman who bears a child on behalf of another person or couple. Now, as it says here, typically via artificial insemination, right? But in this case, they weren't doing that artificial insemination over there. So sometimes the handmaids would be used as surrogate mothers. So the husband would go in and lay with them, and then they would bear the child and for the wife, and then the wife that would be her child. So that's what Rachel suggested here to Jacob, that I may also have children by her. And she gave him Bilhah, her handmaid, to wife, and Jacob went in unto her. And Bilhah conceived, and bare Jacob a son. And Rachel said, God hath judged me, and hath also heard my voice, and hath given me a son. Therefore she called his name Dan, which means judge. And Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again, and bare Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, and you'll see that the names of these sons, right, who become like the patriarchs, or who are the patriarchs, and they become the heads of the tribes, their names have meanings, and those meanings are centered around the circumstance of their birth. And Rachel said, With great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. And she called his name Naphtali, which I believe is my wrestling. Let's see if hopefully the blue letter hasn't changed it, but let's take a look here. Naphthalia, yeah, which is, okay, wrestling, or my wrestling, because you have the ya at the end from the root word na. Oh, is that? Oh, pa, pathal, to twist, to wrestle. Cool. When Leah saw that she left barren, so she wasn't getting pregnant anymore, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her Jacob to wife. So she said, okay, now you go into my handmaid now, and you give me children by her. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a son. And Leah said, A troop cometh, and she called his name Gad. Now, when you go into this, the meaning of these words here, the word troop here, which is also Gad in the Hebrew here, I believe there are two words that look the same, both Gad, but one means fortune. Okay, and then that's what she's saying here when she said a troop cometh. She's saying fortune, like good fortune is coming. All right, by this her son that she has had by her handmaid, and that's why she called his name Gad. So when you actually go into like some of the other translations, you'll see in yeah, even here they mention in the NKJV, some of the other versions have it as fortune. NLT, Leah named him Gad, for she said, "How fortunate am I?" NIV, then Leah said, "What good fortune?" So she named him Gad. So in the meaning of the name being fortune or good fortune for having this child after she had left off bearing, that's why she called him Gad. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a second son. And Leah said, "Happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed," for how many children she was having. And she called his name Asher, which means happy. And Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest, and I believe that was the firstborn of Leah. It says here, in the days of wheat harvest, and found mandrakes in the field, and brought them unto his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Give me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes." Now the mandrakes here were used, let's see, mandrakes used in the Bible, and it would make women more, or it was believed to make women more fertile, and also used as an aphrodisiac. So it says mandrakes appear in the Bible in Genesis 30, where Rachel trades for them with Leah, believing they boost fertility, and in Song of Solomon 7 and 13, where their fragrance symbolizes love and romance in a vineyard setting, highlighting their ancient reputation as an aphrodisiac and fertility aid, despite being related to poisonous plants, likely like deadly nightshade. So the mandrakes she got, they believe, right, that this would increase your fertility and make her more likely to get pregnant, and also once again as an aphrodisiac. And if you don't know what that is, this is what it means. Aphrodisiac, there you go. A food, drink, or drug that stimulates sexual desire, a love potion, horny goatweed, whatever you want to call it. So it says here, where we at with it? Oh, so Reuben brings her the mandrakes, and Rachel basically is asking her for some, right? And she said unto her, "Is it a small matter that thou hast taken my husband? And wouldest thou take away my son's mandrakes also?" Because remember, if you look at it from Leah's perspective, she was given to Jacob, right? So she was his first wife. But because Jacob loved Rachel more, Jacob married Rachel as well. And he showed more favoritism to Rachel, right? He loved Leah less than Rachel. That's the reason why the Lord opened Leah's womb, so she would start having kids, to balance that out. So that's why she's responding to Rachel saying, you've already stolen him because he loves you more, and now you want to take my son's mandrakes as well? And Rachel said, "Therefore he shall lie with thee tonight for thy son's mandrakes." So they made a little trade or a deal or a transaction here, where Rachel said, "Okay, you can basically have him for the night if you give me some of Reuben's mandrakes that he found." And Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him, and said, "Thou must come in unto me, for surely I have hired thee with my son's mandrakes." See, so she hired or bought his night with her from Rachel with her son's mandrakes. And also, as it says, he came out from the field because he was working, and he lay with her all that night. And so if you read this in another translation, NLT says, so that evening, as Jacob was coming home from the fields, Leah went out to meet him. "You must come and sleep with me tonight," she said. "Shit, I have paid for you with some mandrakes that my son found." So that night he slept with Leah. And you best believe she took some of that. And God hearkened unto Leah, and she conceived, and bare Jacob the 5th son. And Leah said, "God hath given me my hire," right? Because of that hire, when she hired him, the result of that was that she ended up getting pregnant. because I have given my maiden to my husband. And she called his name Issachar, which I believe in the Hebrews is it Yashakar or Yashashkar? But that means he is hired, right? But when you go into it, they've updated it, like I was mentioning before, to there is a recompense. And I know it's not my memory, because I remember in the past when you would look it up in the Blue Letter, it wasn't this, right? But I guess they're making updates to on their end as well. But in any case, remember, keeping in mind that their names there were occasions for which they named their children, right? So if she's saying here, surely the Lord has given me my hire, and she hired Jacob with the mandrakes that she basically gave to Rachel, that is where you get the meaning of Issachar's name from. And Leah conceived again and bare Jacob the sixth son. And Leah said, God hath endued me with good dowry. Now will my husband dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. And she called his name Zebulon, which is a Zabalawan, meaning my dwelling, or dwelling. And afterwards she bare a daughter, and called her name Dinah. And God remembered Rachel, and God hearkened to her, and opened her womb. So, Leah's having all these kids, Rachel was not having any, so Lord said, all right, you know what, let me go ahead and balance it out there too. And she conceived and bare a son, and said, God hath taken away my reproach. And she called his name Joseph, which in the Hebrew is Yahwasap, and said, the Lord Yahweh shall add to me another son. All right, and Yahwasap is he has added. And it came to pass, when Rachel had borne Joseph, that Jacob said unto Laban, send me away, that I may go unto mine own place and to my country. So let's see here. How long was it between when, let's see, Jacob married Rachel and when she bore Joseph? Okay, it was about 11 years between Jacob marrying Rachel after serving and giving and her giving birth to Joseph, as Joseph was born at the end of Jacob's second 7-year service period for Laban, with the first 7 years getting him Leah and the next 7 years for Rachel, followed by more years of work before Joseph's birth. Okay, cool. So let me see if they have it here. In the years after marrying both, Leah and Rachel bore children, the first son. Yeah, it's not being too clear here. Well, in any way, as we keep on reading it, it does give the total years that Jacob spent with Laban serving him. But long story short, at this point now, Jacob says, look, I've worked off all my debt, or I've worked off everything, and now I'm trying to go, right? So it says here, and it came to pass, when Rachel had borne Joseph, that Jacob said unto Laban, send me away, that I may go unto mine own place and to my country. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served thee, and let me go. For thou knowest my service which I have done thee. And going back to, I forgot what chapter it was, maybe it was the previous chapter, but remember that at first it would seem that Jacob had to, he did serve 7 years for Rachel, but he was given Leah instead. And he had to agree to work another 7 years, and then and Laban would give him Rachel, right? So if he had already worked those 14 years, then he wouldn't have, because here, remember, Rachel was giving him children as well during this time that he's working for Laban, right? So this is it's at the end of the time when he has worked off the agreement of working that 7 years for Laban for Rachel, that he came and asked to say, hey, let me go, because now I don't owe you anything, right? I've already worked off for both of them, and so now I'm trying to leave. And he says here, verse 27, and Laban said unto him, I pray thee, if I have found favor in thine eyes, tarry, for I have learned by experience that the Lord Yahweh hath blessed me for thy sake. So he's saying, look, if whatever you want, you tell me, but since you've been here serving me, I've been blessed, right? My everything that I own has been increased, So why don't you stay with me? And he said, appoint me thy wages and I will give it. He said, look, whatever payment you want, you let me know. And then I'll give you that, because you've already worked off for everything you asked for in the beginning. So now, since I want you to stay, you tell me the wages you want, and then I'll pay you that, and then you can stay. And he said unto him, thou knowest how I have served thee, and how thy cattle was with me. For it was little which thou hadst before I came. Right? So Jacob took care of Laban's cattle. And he's saying, you only had a few when I came here, and it is now increased into a multitude. And the Lord Yahweh hath blessed thee since my coming. And now, when shall I provide for mine own house also? So he's saying, look, I've been working for you. Since I've been working for you, your cattle, they've increased. You have a multitude of substance now. But if I just keep working for you, how am I also going to start to provide for my own house? Because I have a family now. I have wives. I have children, And he said, what shall I give thee? And Jacob said, thou shalt not give me anything if thou wilt do this thing for me. And I will again feed and keep thy flock. So if you don't have to do anything except this, if you can give me this, then you don't got to pay me any other wages. And then if you do that, and then I'll continue to watch over your flock. I will pass through all thy flock today, removing from thence all the speckled and spotted cattle, and all the brown cattle among the sheep, and the spotted and speckled among the goats. So the speckled, it looks like that. Let me see if I can find an image for this. Is Genesis 30 and 32. Okay. Okay. So these are not bad. So you can see these are of the goats and so on and so forth. The ones that are, they look almost like they have like some form of genetic mutation. So they're not plain colored, right? They're spotted, right? They have little spots of black or brown, whatever, in them. And these were fewer than the plain, because it was more normal to have plain colored sheep or goat or cattle. And so when he says here, Jacob says, look, I'll go through your flock, and all those that are speckled or spotted, right, that have, as it says, all the brown cattle among the sheep, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, of such shall be my hire. So that's the payment that I'll take. You just give me those. So shall my righteousness answer for me in time to come, when it shall come for my hire before thy face, every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goat, and brown among the sheep, that shall be counted stolen with me. So basically, this way it's fair and square, right? You can't say that I've cheated you, because my cattle are going to have this discoloration, the spotted and speckled and so on. And yours are going to be the plain colored. And if you find any of your plain colored with mine, then you'll know, okay, those are ones that I stole. So this way we can avoid the whole quarrel or anything like that. And Laban said, behold, I would it might be according to thy word. So, okay, that sounds good. Let's do that. And Laban is thinking, oh, there are more plain cattle than they are spotted and speckled. So shit, this is a good deal. But even then, Laban being remember, you're now starting to see the characteristic, right? The nature of Laban, because first he supplanted Jacob, or he deceived him by giving him, not telling him, and then giving him Leah before Rachel, and then got him to work for 14 years. And now that he has agreed to this, as it says in verse 35, And he removed that day the he goats that were ring-streaked and spotted, and all the she goats that were speckled and spotted, and every one that had some white in it, and all the brown among the sheep, and gave them into the hand of his sons. This is Laban. So he basically tried to cheat and went and had that day. He removed all of them and separated them and gave them to his sons. And he set 3 days' journey betwixt himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. So he basically said, I'm already gonna remove all of these out here. So when you go through the mist, you ain't gonna really find any. And Jacob, so as it says, he ended up removing them. And so Jacob is like, all right, he's doing his job anyway. He's taking care of Laban's flocks. So it comes to pass, right, as time goes on. It says here, and Jacob took him rods of green poplar and of the hazel and chestnut tree. These are branches. Okay. So Jacob took branches from these trees, cut them down, and piled white streaks in them, and made the white appear, which was in the rods. So he takes the branches, and then he basically strips, not completely, but he strips certain parts so the bark starts to show. Or let me say that the white inside it starts to show. So let's look here at Genesis 30 and 37. Let's see if we can get a good visual of it. Okay, mention the green poplar one. When you type that in, I think it goes into a specific kind. Okay, so let's look at here. Yeah. Let's do bark. Okay, so this is the bark, right? And he basically, if you use a machete or something to just chop the sides of it, you're gonna have parts of it that have the bark covered and parts of it that don't, right? Like you've cut that bark. I'm trying to see if I can find peeled. Yeah, so I'm trying to see. Okay, maybe this is not bad, but it's not the same tree, but there we go. Something like this. So you can see beneath the bark or the outside, you can see the white of the actual branch. Okay, so he ended up doing this. Let's see if these are good. It's not really a good one, but I think you get the point. So he ended up doing this with the branches, so you can have the whites show on certain parts. Yeah, not bad, not bad. As it says here, and piled white streaks in them. So it wasn't, he didn't strip it completely, but it looked like this. So it's like the little streaks or streaks within it. So now the tree looks spotted, or it looks, discolored. Part of it is covered with this, and part of it has the whites showing. It said, yeah, and made the whites appear, which was in the rods. And he set the rods, which he had piled before the flocks in the gutters, in the watering troughs, when the flocks came to drink, that they should conceive when they came to drink. So typically when the flocks will come and they're drinking around that area, they would mate. And what Jacob did, which this was also a belief in the ancient world, right? That basically whatever the animals would see as they were mating, that would influence their offspring, how their offspring will come out. So what Jacob did here was, by creating this similar coloring, right, of the if you had sheep that was ring streaked or spotted, he basically mimicked that with the tree branches. And so whenever they came to drink, he would place the branches in front of them, so that as they were drinking, and if they got in heat and they started to mate, before their eyes they would see those discolored rods, and that would influence their offspring that would come out, causing, as it was believed then, causing the babies to come out looking, with this discoloration. Now, let me actually read some more. It says, and the flocks conceived before the rods, and brought forth cattle ring-streaked, speckled, and spotted. Now this was like the equivalent of what happened with Tobit, right? Today, if you go and try this, you're not more likely you're not going to get that outcome. However, because the Most High actually, caused this to happen. He caused the miracle to happen on behalf of Jacob by Jacob doing this. And it's like what happened with Tobit. When you read in the book of Tobit, the angel that goes with Tobias on their journey, they catch a fish, and I think it was either the gall or the eye of the fish that if I remember correctly, he burnt it and then put it on the eyes of Tobit, right? So let's look that up and see here. How was Tobit healed? Yeah, it says Tobit was healed of his blindness when his son Tobias applied the gall, that's what it was, from the fish, guided by the archangel Raphael, onto his father's cataracted eyes, causing the white films to peel away and restore his sight. A miraculous cure showing God's divine intervention through faith and obedience. Let me see what else they have on here. Okay, so now if you go and do this today, yeah, it's not going to work, right? If it was, then people wouldn't need to be doing cataract surgery. But the Lord basically used some means. It's kind of like when Yahushua spat on the dirt and then rubbed it on the eyes of the blind man, and then he was able to see. It doesn't mean if you go and spit on the dirt and rub it on his eyes, he's going to be able to see. That was divine intervention. This was just the action used to bring it about. So similarly, this is what's going on over here, with Jacob using this to alter or to affect how the offspring of the cattle would come out. So in this case, he was kind of like artificially creating, through this influence, these I guess you could call it genetically mutated, if that flocks, okay, from their phenotype, that is, meaning how their actual fur would look. It says here, and Jacob did separate the lambs. So remember that his were those that were multicolored. Let's just call it that. So as they brought forth and they were ring streaked and speckled and spotted, he separated those to the side because those were his, and set the faces of the flocks toward the ring streaked. So after he had done this, to now have some cattle that were now his because they were now multicolored, going forward, what he would do is he would set the faces of the other cattle to look at the multicolored ones whenever they would mate. And that would basically trigger that same thing, right? This is what they're seeing as they're mating. And so now it starts to have their offspring look more like what they were seeing. In fact, let's type this in here. See, Jacob's experiment with Laban's cattle. Yeah, I'm trying to see. Okay, see. Let's type in. Let's play around with this thing right here. Was it believed in the ancient world that what animals saw when mating influenced their offspring? Let's put it that way. As with the case of Jacob. All right, so it says here, yes, it was a widely held belief in the ancient world, and for many centuries afterward, that a pregnant mother's experience particularly strong visual or emotional stimuli, known as maternal impressions, could directly influence the physical appearance and traits of her offspring. But obviously, in the case with Jacob, this would be more than just a pregnant mother's experience. Because this would be, he put it there while they were mating. But also, right, it says that he did face the flocks towards the ring streaked, right, and the brown. Let's see. The belief was common in the region where the story of Jacob takes place, an ancient Mesopotamian Ullman text states, if a pregnant ewe looks at a multicolored cloth, it will bear multicolored young. So there you go. So it wasn't like Jacob was just doing this randomly. Jacob's actions with the peeled striped branches in the watering troughs were based on this prevalent cultural belief that the visual impressions the strong mating animals would received would be imprinted onto their developing offspring, causing them to be striped, speckled, or spotted. The biblical narrative itself attributes Jacob's success to divine intervention rather than the efficacy of his method, as God later reveals to Jacob in a dream that he was the one who ensured the flocks produced the desired offspring to compensate Jacob for Laban's deceit. See? So, coming back here. So, this is the tactic or the technique, or, how Jacob went about it. And it ended up working because the Most High blessed it. So as it says here, he separates the lambs from Laban's, and then he has as it says, he set the faces of the flock towards the ring strait, because now looking at it would influence their offspring. And all the brown in the flock of Laban, and he put his own flocks by themselves, and put them not onto Laban's cattle. So he was using this method, right? Whenever he would get offspring that would be his, fair game, he'd separate them. And whenever the rest would come to that area, he would position them to where they're always looking at the ring strait and the brown, and that would influence their offspring. And it came to pass, whensoever the stronger cattle did conceive, that Jacob laid the rods before their eyes, or before the eyes of the cattle in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. So whenever they were getting heat and they're about to get it on, the stronger ones, well, he could tell, okay, this is real strong one. What they call selective breeding, right? He would have those look at the rods, because if looking at the rods influences their offspring to become multicolored or ring strait or spotted, then he wanted the good genetics from the stronger cattle, right? So he would use that, whatever the stronger cattle would mate, to have the strong offspring that come of them be those that would be in his flock. But when the cattle were feeble, he put them not in. So when it was the weak ones, and he could tell, he was a shepherd. So whenever the weak ones would come, he'd be like, yeah, you could drink your water. It's all right. You ain't looking at these you ain't looking at these rods. So the feebler were Laban's and the stronger Jacob's. See? So whenever the regular or weak cattle would breed, they would breed and their offspring would be of the same color, plain colored, but they were weaker. And whenever the stronger would breed, Jacob would use his tactic and the offspring would be multicolored and they would be his. So he ended up having the better flock. And the man increased exceedingly and had much cattle and maidservants and men servants and camels and asses. And with this, Laban cheated in the beginning, right? He was being deceitful. But with this, you couldn't come and say, hey, you're cheating, because it's not like he was taking paint and painting over Laban's flock. They agreed that, hey, the ones that look multicolored are mine, then the plain are yours. So, technically speaking, if mine end up stronger than yours, they're still multicolored and they're mine. So this was the tactic or the technique that Jacob used, which obviously, being blessed by the Lord, ended up working in his favor to balance out the deceit that Laban was trying to get him with. And that brings us to the end of the book of Genesis, the 30th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Recha, Kudash. And until next time, Shalom.